and welcome to Books to Last, the podcast that challenges readers to pick the only 5 books they may take with them when cast away to a mystery remote location. As ever, I'm joined by a book-loving guest, and this episode I'm joined by Anvita. Welcome, Anvita. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone.
It's such a pleasure. For the benefit of any listeners who may not be familiar with you and what you do, why don't you introduce yourself a bit and tell us about you and books?
Of course. Hello. So my name is Anvita, and I'm a bookstagrammer, booktuber, etc. Basically, I just talk about books on all social media channels. With books, for me, like I've had a really long history with books. I feel like everyone has had this issue where you're reading for school and because of that you start hating it. But then luckily I had a book fair at school during middle school, as it is. And so I read my first book that wasn't assigned to me by school, and that just, started off my love for books. And since then I've just been reading for the last I don't know, 15 years or something. So, yeah, I love books. I love talking about books with everyone. So, I'm happy to be here and talk about it with you.
And we're so happy to have you on. I love a school book fair. It's one of the things I'm most looking forward to. My son going to school, because I really want to go to the school book fairs, which probably shouldn't be my highest priority in that area, but what kind of books do you read? What was the last great one that you remember reading?
I'm not picky about books. I kind of try to read everything that I can, find. I don't read horror. I'm a big scaredy cat, so no horror for me. Yeah. So no horror for me. But besides that, literally everything. Even I think last year I started reading mystery books and thrillers, because even those kind of scare me. And I try to finish them in the daytime. So by nighttime there are other things occupying my mind and I can sleep well. But yeah, I read everything, literally. My favorite genre though is young adult fantasy, specifically. It always gets me. And as you were asking, the last book that I read that I really I even yesterday I was talking about it on my Bookstagram. I read it last week, I think, and it's still in my mind. It's called Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong, if you've heard of it.
The rising star Chloe Gong taking the world by storm.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first book in her second duology, but it's very closely related to her first duology, because it's some of the same characters and set in the same world basically. So it was really nice to get back into the world, but also meet new characters and learn more about other side characters from the other book, and things like that. But yeah, it was a really, really good book.
Is one that's on my list. I've got her first duology on my shelves, which I plan on getting to soon, hopefully. But I completely understand what you're saying about mysteries and thrillers, because I've also recently started reading Agatha Christie, and I read And Then There Were None recently, and even though I knew who the killer was, I knew what the ending was because I saw the play years ago when I was younger with a friend. I was reading it at night when it was all dark outside and you couldn't see outside, but sometimes the curtains were open, and it was really, really scary because everyone in my house was asleep, so it was just me on my own, and I kept sort of looking up at the doors and thinking someone was going to come in. It was so scary, even though I knew what was going to happen. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But better to read those in the day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've given us a little bit of a flavour of what you like to read, and we're going to get into your 5 books shortly. But as ever, you don't have to be cast away to a desert island, because as everyone who's listened to the podcast before knows, I'm not a big fan of sand. So if you're going to be cast away, whereabouts are you going to be cast away to?
For me, it's I'm I'm a beach person, but I'm also a mountain person. So like I don't have like a specific, like there are many places I can think of when I think of like the ideal location, but I just want somewhere where there are mountains, but it's also an island. So there's, best of both worlds. So like something like, Jeju Island in Korea, or like Hawaii has a lot of mountains and beaches, like things like that. So I just want, you know, places I can hike and stuff, and like, wilderness and stuff, but like also beach where I can just lay down and read my books. So
Sounds
yeah.
divine. Sounds like a great location to be cast away with 5 books.
Yeah.
So, what is the first book you'll be taking with you?
Before that, I just want to explain about like overall why I chose these books. And it's just so in my mind, like if I'm going to be somewhere where I have no access to a bookstore to get more books and stuff, I wanted I'm a big mood reader. Like I cannot just I set up like these lists where I'm like, okay, monthly, these are the books I'm hoping to read and stuff. But then even then I'll just end up picking up whatever I'm in the mood for
I'm
at that
exactly the
moment.
same.
Yeah. So
That list becomes a
literally,
list of books I'm not going to read that month.
literally, because I I literally posted like a couple of days back, like my September hopeful reads, and then that night itself, I picked up Foul Lady Fortune, which was not in the list at all. So I was just like, why am I doing this? But anyways, so I'm a big mood reader. So that's why I picked 5 books in each like different genres, so that, I have something to read for whichever mood I'm in. I didn't pick any mystery, even though I've been getting into it, because if I'm stuck alone in a remote island, I'm already scared. So there's no need to get scared even more. So yeah, first book that I picked was Lexicon by Max Berry. I I haven't still like I read this for the first time, I think in like 2013. So it was like 10 years ago, but I've still not met a single person who's read the book besides me. Like,
They are the best, but also the worst, because
yeah,
it feels like you've got this gem, but also you can't speak to anyone about it.
exactly. That's why I thought, like, of course, I have to mention it here. Maybe I'll find someone who's read it. But yeah, it's a sci fi book, which is one of the genres I've read the least. I think, I don't know, I haven't really just found any that I've been wanting to read in that genre, but I want to read more of it. But yeah, I don't even know how I came to be like how I found this book. I just have this recollection of reading it in like high school and like just falling in love with it. And like I've read it, I think 5, 6 times since then. And the last time was last year when I found like a used book from like Goodwill or something and reread it and like just annotated it, because I've lost like 3, 4 copies of it in those years that I've read it because of moving and stuff. So yeah, Lexicon by Max Berry, one of my favorite books that literally nobody knows. So yeah.
You said it's sci-fi. What
Mhm.
roughly is the setup of the story?
Okay, so basically there's a school and it's like for gifted students, but the gift like is persuasion. Like I don't know how to explain it completely well. Like it's a mix between like using language and like linguistics to persuade other people. And like, so basically we have our main character, this girl who almost doesn't make it into the hiring process, but like she like tricks her way into the school and like
Sounds
cheats
like
her
she's
way.
perfect for it.
Exactly. Yeah, so she just cheats her way into like letting them stay and all of that. And it's like there's an alternating timeline and stuff. And like just I don't even want to tell you too much about it because this is going to ruin it. But there's like it's very, the magic of it with linguistics and stuff is so like intricate and like well thought out, I guess, that like it just seemed like something that could actually happen. And I was in high school, so that, yeah.
It sounds like one of those that if you get too into the details, it gives it away and you want people to experience it for the first time. I mean, it does sound really interesting. It's not a concept that's used a lot, which is interesting because I've not heard of a book like that before. So yeah, and a bit of nostalgia read in there. There's usually a small nostalgia read just added in to the lists. Okay, so what is the second book you'll be taking with you?
Second book I chose is a romance because I mean I love romances, but like for me, the top, like besides like all the like sub tropes, enemies to lovers and all that, like the top thing I need is banter. Like I need good, funny banter. Like I want to be laughing. So for me, the second book is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which is very famous and everybody knows it, I feel like. So yeah, that's the second book I chose.
I have Book Lovers again on, well, I say on my shelves, in the boxes that are moving to my house.
Yeah.
Yes, but I do have it because I mean, it's right there in the title. It feels like and I've heard such good things, and I've never read any Emily Henry.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, it feels like a good one to start on because I've looked at some of the others. I was like, I'm going to start with this, and if I like this, I will look elsewhere.
Yeah.
So presumably this is your favorite Emily Henry. Have you read a lot of her other stuff?
I have read all four of her books so far. But this one and the second, that is like the close second, is People We Meet on Vacation. These two books are my favorites of hers. The other two are also good, but they're not like at the level that these are. Yeah. Book Lovers is just like first page to last page, like the banter was just, yeah, so good.
Yeah, I get it with a lot of the romance authors who sort of put out a few, especially when they're either in the similar style or similar world or series. It really comes down to your preferences on tropes and characters and things like that, because usually they're all objectively equally good. And it just comes down to I often find that I tend to gravitate towards the specific characters that I like, not necessarily anything to do with the stories themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
So a bit of sci-fi and a bit of romance. What is the third book you'll be taking with you?
The third book is nonfiction. I don't really talk about my nonfiction reads that much, I've realized, on my bookstagram and stuff. But this one I read 2 years ago. No, 3 years ago, and it's just been on my mind since. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She is the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, I think. I'm not completely sure. I didn't read the book. But Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, it's about like um creativity and like how to like nurture your creativity, and like not even just like as like a writer or like content creator or like these kind of things, just like in life as general. We are all like creative people meant to be creating stuff, things like that. And like just very inspiring, very thought provoking, and just makes you feel like I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do all the things I've planned out to do, and like just motivating. So that would be the third book.
Those are the best kinds of nonfiction, I think, that sort of really spur you to take some action. And I think creativity is a really interesting concept. I always find it really fascinating to hear about, writers and artists and just anyone who creates, to just hear about how they work in their process, because everyone's so different where they get their ideas from. I suppose you'll have lots of time to nurture inspiration on your mountainous island to do
exactly.
lots of creative work.
Yeah.
I read a little bit of nonfiction. It's you have to be in the right headspace, because you want to be able to sort of really pay attention, because I feel like you do more of the work than the book in nonfiction, whereas the fiction tends to do most of the work.
Fiction is just like an escape. You're not like thinking about yourself or like what you're what stage of life you're at, or like anything like that. But like nonfiction is just like makes you think, makes you work, on yourself, on like how your life is going and things like that. But I mean, for me, nonfiction, like most of the time, like 99%, including Big Magic, was like through audiobooks, which is just so much easier, so much more helpful. It's like the author is just talking to me and like telling me these things like I'm just talking to them,
Yeah.
just easier to grasp. Also, I can just do it while I'm taking a walk, or like, I don't know, just doing things at home. So yeah.
No, I completely agree. My favorite nonfiction audiobooks are always the ones that are narrated by the author themselves, because they get what they're saying. So
Yep.
it just is communicated much better when they're saying it. And I always kind of feel like, because I listen to podcasts like all day, so I listen mostly nonfiction podcasts with the occasional sort of more, it's still nonfiction, but sort of comedy, creative, bookish stuff in there as well. But generally,
Yep.
like a lot of productivity, news, time management, that sort of thing. And I tend to learn better that way. So I find each chapter of an audiobook is kind of like a mini podcast episode almost. And I just find it goes in better than me trying to force myself to sit down and read it. Sometimes I'll have a copy so that I can highlight and annotate.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say just the bits that are relevant and stuff. And sometimes there's diagrams, so you've got to have the diagrams.
Yeah. For me, I read Big Magic, like I listened to Big Magic, and then like I loved it so much and it was so inspiring. I ended up buying a book so I could annotate. So yeah, that's how I always end up doing it.
That's definitely one I'm going to have to check out, because that sounds interesting. And I always like anything that tries to anything that makes me feel creative, because I always find creativity strikes when I can't do anything about it. So I'll be like driving somewhere, and I'll be driving somewhere for about 2 or 3 hours, and about 20 minutes into the journey, I'll just be hit with this urge to do everything, like my entire to-do list. In my head I was like, I could do it right now if only I wasn't driving.
Me at like 3 in the morning, I'm like, oh my god, I need to write my book. I need to write a book right now. Like it takes time, but like it's also like I've just like learned that like as soon as it comes, just like write it down like in your notes or something, and just keep it for like the next time where you're like actually able to do something about it.
I've started using the hands-free in my phone to sort of leave myself messages, so sort of text myself or leave myself voicemails, so that I don't forget things.
Yes, that's very helpful for sure.
Yeah, but God, it's just so inconvenient. It makes me wonder how all these amazing authors produce the stuff that they produce.
Yeah, that's very true. Even Big Magic talks a lot about that, because like she talks about how like Eat Pray Love like came to her, and like how her other author friends have like gotten their inspiration, and like versus how she got her inspiration, and like just many different ways around it, I guess, and like many different working styles, and how they all managed to end up with a product and not just keep all of them half finished. So yeah, definitely something I would recommend checking out.
Awesome. Okay, so we've definitely hit different genres for all 3 of your first books. What is the 4th one you want to take with you?
4th genre was very hard, like to find a book that I could actually take. It's fantasy. So the first genre is fantasy, and most of the ones that I've read are all like series. But since I can only take one book and I wanted it to be just a full story, that I had to choose something that was just not a series but a standalone, which was really hard because most of the ones that I love and I've read are like series.
Yeah, same. They're like 7-book series as well, so you don't even get most of the book.
Yeah, it was definitely a very tough decision, but I think like once, like I was going through, my books and stuff and seeing which ones would work for it. And as soon as I saw the book, I was like, it has to be this one. Like, why was I even like worrying about it? But anyways, fourth book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book, I think I read it last year and just, or last year, one of the two. But I read it in the last couple years, and it's just so well done. Like the writing is so beautiful, and like, I mean, V Schwab, like everything she writes is beautiful. Like even like her newsletter, like I literally wait for it. It's just so nice and calming to read
She's a
them.
great Instagram follow. I really like her Instagram.
Yeah, like even like everything that where she's put herself in it, like it's just so well done. But anyways, so Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. That, yeah, I love the world building. I love the characters. I love just the alternating timelines, the story itself, like the plot itself, like everything about it was just, it just grabbed onto me like so quick. And like, yeah, highly recommend if you haven't read it.
Yeah. So I read it. I read it the year it came out, which is unheard of for me because I
Mhm.
generally see a book that everyone's talking about and I go, "Oh, that looks good," and then I pre-order it or I order it. It arrives. I put it on my shelf and I don't read it for 4 years. That's usually how things go. But everyone was getting like, because I just my entire Instagram was filled with people
Yeah.
crying over this book. And I was like, I need to read it because I need to understand now while everybody else is going through it.
Mhm.
And I mean, I did enjoy it. It's
Mhm.
objectively incredibly well written because, like you say, V. Schwab is just an incredible writer.
Yeah.
I think I was in a bit of a different place at the
Mhm.
time with my own life that I didn't really connect to Addie's struggle
Mhm.
particularly, but
Yeah.
like it was I still really like I did enjoy reading it. I think it still got a really good rating from me anyway because it is just a very very good book. But I think for the people it does really connect with, it's like it's a really meaningful book for a lot
Mhm.
of different reasons. I mean, for anyone who is listening but hasn't heard, well, they've heard of Addie LaRue, but they have no idea what it's about because they just see the emotional outpouring and nothing else.
Yeah.
It's about a young girl in, I'm gonna say, like
France.
medieval France. Yeah,
Yeah.
France a long time ago.
Yeah.
And to escape a arranged marriage, she makes a deal with a demon to live forever. Except there's a twist because I mean anybody who's ever made a deal with a demon will know there's always a twist.
Yeah.
And everyone that she ever meets forgets her, and it's basically tracking her journey through multiple time periods.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it's a really it. I liked that even though it's alternating timelines, you could completely follow it because I've
Yeah.
had difficulty with alternating timelines before, like
Mhm.
the Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern,
Ooh, yeah.
another objectively really well
Uh,
written book. But I had to sort of have like a, you know, in movies where they have the boards with all the string.
the red string. Yeah.
I had to have that in my head to watch what was happening. But and not like that with Addie LaRue.
Mhm.
You can very clearly see the progression of the
Yes.
story.
Definitely. I feel like also, I mean, for me, I'm more of a plot person than a character person. So for me, it was more about the plot and like just the way it, like all the different timelines were described, but also like we see the relationships between Addie and, everyone else in the books and stuff, in the timelines, and like also just like this different cities we see in their
Yeah,
different timelines. It's just the way it was described was just so beautiful to me. So it wasn't even like about Addie or like, I think
yeah,
Henry was his name, you
yes.
know. Yeah. So it wasn't even about them. It was just like about the plot and like how, because for me it's when I'm like, when I come across plots that like make no sense to me, like it's not like something that
Yeah,
in real life, like I'm just thinking about like how I would be in that situation, like what I would do,
yeah,
like just seeing that and seeing how Addie would be and how Addie was in the situation,
yeah.
just like really cool to imagine, I guess.
Yeah, so because I'm quite character driven, very much if
Hmm.
I adore the characters, there can be no plot
Yeah.
whatsoever. They could have, if I love all three characters and all they do is sit in a room for the entire book, I am absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, where if the plot
Mhm.
goes so off the rails that you're
Yeah.
just like, this would never happen. It does sometimes pull me out of it a little bit. I am
Yeah.
actually noticing a kind of theme, sort
Hmm.
of, in the four books you've picked so far, because with Lexicon you've got the sort of linguistics and there's a lot of focus on sort of communication and words and that sort of thing. And then
Hmm.
book lovers, obviously we didn't do a synopsis, but they they both work in the book industry, don't they? And it's kind
Yeah.
of about creativity and create and stories and that sort of thing. And then Big Magic again is about the creative
Creativity.
process.
Yeah.
And a big plot point in Addie LaRue is that she loves to meet creative, artistic people and sow the seeds for sort of future works. And it's about how
Hmm.
a tiny thing, almost inconsequential in your life, can
Hmm.
spawn a really big work, like just, meeting this one random person in a bar who you don't even remember, or finding a little wooden bird, um
Hmm.
can sort of create these masterpieces. So there's a lot of sort of creative process, artistic work in all of
Yeah.
these books, which is, I think that's I it's a nice I think that's a nice thing, a nice theme to have.
That is so interesting because I didn't even put that together. And like you just found out about these books and like you already could see that is just so interesting because I've never thought about it that way. But I do tend to lean a lot towards like books with like creative characters or like creative, plot points and like things like that. So that's very interesting
um
that you that
it's a
you
lot
saw that.
easier it's a lot easier to see from the outside often. I've had a
Yeah.
few guests come on who they have sort of picked five books. They're just like, oh no, I just really like these five books and they're completely not related to each other whatsoever. And I'm like, well, if you look, there is a line.
That makes so much sense.
Um,
Oh,
well, we're on to the fifth and final book of
yeah.
the main list.
Mhm.
So I wonder if the theme will be continued. What is the last book on your list?
The last one is more like I don't like to call it a genre because it's not like, you know, I can't think of another word except genre. It's not like romance or like
Mm.
fantasy or like sci-fi. It's young adult, which is
Mm.
like just the age.
Yeah, because that can be any genre, but
Yeah,
it's
young
target
adult.
audience.
Exactly. So it is young adult romance, but it's called Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli, if you've heard of it.
I have heard of the author because
Yes.
she
Simon versus
wrote,
the Homo
yeah,
sapien agenda. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
and yeah, there's Leah on the offbeat.
yes,
Yes, so
exactly.
I've not heard of Imogen. So is that
This
set in the
one,
same world?
it's not, I don't think, because I actually haven't read either of the other two books. This was my first book by Becky. But this book actually came out this year, so very recent. And I read it a couple months back and just loved it. Like it's so good. I I don't even know how to describe it, but like it's basically So Imogen, the main character, is like, she's always thought, like her entire life, she's thought that she's like an ally. She's not in the, she's not queer, she's not LGBTQ, she's thought she's straight, but that she's an ally. Because, so many people in her life, like she's always gravitated towards people who are queer, but she's not. But then, and this is like set in this 1 week of her spring break, where she goes to a, her future college and spends like a weekend there with her friends and stuff. So there she starts, like, questioning herself, and like, has she, just been telling herself that she's straight, or like, because there's no one way to do it, right? There's no one way to be. So it's just, it was really, I don't even know how to, I still haven't even processed it, like the book itself, like even though it's been months, but like I just, every time I think about it, like it just makes me happy to see that there's works like this coming out. And just, I don't know, just, it was just nice to see about, like, the different ways people come out, the different ways people realize, and like just real stories, like that there's no one way to be queer, and like, there's no like, you're straight until you come out, like that kind of, I don't even know if I'm explaining it well, but
No, it's different journeys and people arriving at, a sort of the same place, but also not the same place. I suppose it's it's the process of trying to figure out who you are, and if it's the week, as you say, the sort of, I've seen in, they don't do it in the UK, but I've seen in American TV shows and stuff, where they go and visit their college and stuff. It's a big monumental time of change where you're sort of uprooting your entire life and going off and sort of flying the nest. And it seems like a logical time that maybe other questions might come up if they are questions you hadn't addressed previously. Because some people don't feel the need to sort of have those questions immediately, because they just sometimes don't come up.
Yeah, exactly that. And also just like, it's that, it's even like this label that, like, if you are not, like that, the mainstream, the way it is straight, like who's to decide that? It's kind of like
quote unquote default, even though it's really not.
Like maybe you just don't care to like find out what that label is that you are, but like it doesn't have to mean that you're straight until you make yourself do the work and figure it out. So
and labels are overrated for most people, aren't they? It's just, I know a lot of people who don't tend to fuss themselves too much with labels, because it's too much like a box to sort of be put in. But it's nice that, because like I said, Becky Albertalli, she's done a few books in I suppose in this space of, coming out journeys and LGBTQ identity and that sort of thing. And I've not read any of them myself, because I think I keep saying Love, Simon in my head because I know that's what they called the movie. I think when the initial books first came out, I think I was kind of going through this phase where I wasn't reading YA, not because of anything in particular, but I just had stopped reading as much YA as I used to, because I used to read loads. And then because of that, the endless cycle of new books, it was one of those I'd never ended up coming back round to me. But it's really good that she's still writing stuff that is meaningful and good stories that people are finding interesting points. And so, that is your full list. And yes, still a journey of discovery in that last one. So there is a sort of sort of ties in.
Very true.
for the benefit of anyone listening who maybe wants to quickly run to the shop and the bookshop and their local independent bookshop and buy all of these books, what could you just run through all 5 books that you've picked, please?
Yes. So the first book is Lexicon by Max Berry. The second one is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. The third one is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. The fourth one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And the fifth one is Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli.
Excellent. And were there any honorable mentions or books that you wanted to add but you just couldn't quite squeeze them on there? We have had everything from none to like 15, I think was the limit.
Yeah.
someone had, so go
Yeah.
nuts.
No, I still tried to keep it to just 2 more books. These 2 are like, the first one was like my favorite book of last year, but I didn't include it because it's kind of really sad, and I don't know if that would be a mood I would ever be in a remote location. But it's called A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. I hope I'm saying that right. This book is a historical fiction, so it also has alternating timelines, and it's like a multi-generational book where it's like one timeline is like the mother-in-law, one timeline is, the daughter-in-law, and then the third one is the middle woman's daughter. So 3 different timelines, and like it's like the daughter's perspective is like the current perspective, and like you're seeing um each of their experience as like, so the first one, the mother-in-law, she was a Palestinian refugee who came to, I think they lived in New York. And then the middle one is someone who married into that family, but she was born and brought up in, you know, Palestine, and then she came to New York after getting married to the mother-in-law's son. And then the daughter is like Palestinian American because she was born and brought up. So like just different timelines and like seeing those perspectives, but also there's like a mystery aspect, which I won't say much because you know you'll get it when you read the book. But yeah, very well done, very well written.
That
Yeah.
sounds fascinating. A very multi-layered book. I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of historical fiction doing the sort of ancestral,
Yes.
like, layers of
Mhm.
narrative, and I think it's a really interesting thing to sort of play with, and it's really good when it's done well. So yeah, that's another one that's I'm kind of glad that I've at least read some of the books on your list because or already own them, because otherwise this was going to cost me a lot of money. And
Yeah.
okay, so what's the second book of your honorable mentions?
The second one is a book I read around the start of this year, and I think till now it is still my favorite book of this year. It's called Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. This is not Greek mythology. What am I saying? It's a Indian mythology retelling, and it's about, so Kaikeyi is the name of the main character, and so basically there's this Indian epic that's called Ramayana, which like literally I feel like every Indian knows about. Like it's like how people know about, like, Zeus and like
Yeah.
that kind of, yeah. So that's like our Ramayana. And then so Kaikeyi, basically in the original epic, she was Ram, who is the main character in Ramayana. She was his stepmother, right? And she is portrayed like like she's like an evil character, like she's like a villain in his story in the original in the original epic. So this is like a feminist retelling of like her life and her story, and like, it's not, I mean, it is fiction in a lot of parts, but also not in like a lot of other, you know, main storyline stuff. So just like, you know, unlikable women characters who are like badass and like, you know,
Yeah, that
very,
sounds so
yeah.
cool.
It was just, if you've read Cersei by, I don't know, Madeline Miller, this is like, it, they both gave me like the same feeling, you know? Because like even Cersei, a feminist retelling, like, you know, she's unliked by like everyone, she's like banished off to another land and like all that stuff. Like Kaikeyi has like very similar, yeah, it's very good. And it has like a magical aspect in it too. So like there's a bit of fantasy in it. So yeah.
That sounds so cool. I really want to check that out because
Hmm.
I have not read any Indian mythology, but I would really love to because I like literally all mythology, mainly because
Yeah.
I'm and I really want to sort of explore out of my sort of safety zone of
Hmm.
Greek mythology, basically,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is like what I
Okay.
Percy Jackson introduced me to at a very young age and sort of never let go.
That's
Um,
so funny that you mentioned that because that's what I'm reading right now.
Percy Jackson. Is
Yeah.
it the first time you're reading it?
Yep.
Okay, I will say no more. It
Yeah.
is absolutely like probably it is my favorite series. It's the
Hmm.
a lot of people my age sort of fell in love with reading
Yeah.
Harry Potter because they read that at a really young age. But I didn't read Harry Potter first because I had seen the films
Same.
as a young child, so didn't need to.
Yeah.
So I read the Percy Jacksons, and that was my first book series where I, saved
Yeah.
up my money and I went to the store and I bought them all myself and
Yeah.
just love it so much and it still holds up so well for something
Hmm.
that was written in the 2000s.
Yeah. Very true. Very
um
true.
yeah, so amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that more people are reading them. um no, not that Rick Riordan really needs the help with the book sales, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the show is coming out soon, I think. So just so because I did watch, I think I don't know how many movies came out with Logan
Two,
Lerman
they're
too,
not very
right?
good.
So I think I watched the first one, but I hadn't read the books, so I just went into it blind. So it was good to
Yeah,
me because I didn't know what the books were about. But I'm reading it now, so
yeah,
I'm remembering the differences and stuff. So it is nice to be able to read them all now
I
and
was
prepare
the
for the show.
same. I watched the first film before I read the book, but I did find it wasn't much of a spoiler because the
Mhm.
plot is they did not use very much from the original story
Yeah.
in the film, which was it's kind of good because it means you get to sort of experience it for the first time. So yeah, really amazing. But I mean, it's a great list, especially a good list for
Mhm.
mood readers because you've got all the emotions and all the
Yes.
genres, and it's gonna cover every base. So,
Yep.
um, those are all of the books you'll be taking with you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking books with me. It's been
Of
so much
course.
fun.
Yeah. I loved
Um,
this. Yeah, it was so fun.
it feels like we've got a lot of reading in common, so I think I'm probably going to have to pick up some more of your recommendations because I think I'll
Hmm.
probably like them if you do.
Yes,
So
you definitely should. Especially Kaikeyi, I think, because you said you're a character person, I think you would love it. Like it's literally one of the best character works that I've read recently. So,
yeah,
yeah.
and I've already got like three people in my head that I'm going to recommend that to almost immediately because I
Yeah.
know they'll like it as well.
I'm glad to
um,
hear that.
so if listeners wanted to check you out and any more recommendations and any more books that you like, whereabouts
Mhm.
can they find you?
So my Instagram is like where I'm mostly at. It's called Anvita's Corner. So Anvitas and then corner, Corner. And my YouTube is also the same. This is the same for everything. So YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah.
We love cohesive branding where everything
Yeah.
matches. It's great. Um,
Yeah.
if listeners like what they hear, they should go check Anvita out in all those places. Anvita's Corner, everywhere where things are
Yeah.
posted.
Yeah.
Um, And if you like the podcast, remember to sort of follow, subscribe, all of the usual stuff, and follow us on social media, which is at Books to Last Pod. Again, across all of the different platforms, although Instagram is the main one that I use for the podcast these days. So, listeners, thank you for listening. Anvita, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
And until next time, bye for now.
Bye.